So let's say I look at a situation, you're like, okay, bro, like define for me the kind of wife you want. So I like write a description out of my wife, and I still feel terrible. And you're like, bro, you wrote a really good description. Why do you feel terrible? Because deep down, I don't feel like that's ever going to be a reality. It's hopeless. Yeah. And so if you feel hopeless about something, or if you feel like it's never going to happen, then of course your motivation and your feelings around it are always going to be low and negative. So what happens is that you try and you fail, and you try and you fail, and you try and you fail. And because you try and fail, what happens is that it feels like nothing's going to work. For example, let's say that I know one of my students, he went to be a doctor, and he kept trying to get into medical school. He kept failing to get into medical school. But once you fail the medical exam once, twice, three times, as long as you're improving and iterating and learning, every time you're just getting closer to actually doing it. That's why you see these people, they failed their driving test like 15 times. Okay, but when they got to the 14th time, they were much closer to passing than they were the first time. So I think you've got to be careful of the way that you're viewing the situation, because the truth is that you are closer to success than you think. And, as Muslims, we have to be optimistic. It's very easy for us to get pessimistic, especially if you look at what's happening around the world, the situations, everything. It's very, very easy for us to fall to pessimism. Same way with the kind of situations that you have with your own families, because families are one of those things that you've tried with for years and so many times and all of this kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean anything. The past does not equal the future. It doesn't, unless you let it. Unless you go, okay, I'm going to have the same hopelessness and this and this and this, right? I would be positive. I would not look at failure the way you were looking at it, and I would remind myself that I'm now closer than ever before, inshallah, right? And I wouldn't lose hope, and I would have that resolve. There's a reason why Allah put you in this position. There's a reason why you're thinking like this, but you have to control your own mindset. You have to push yourself past the doubts and the fears and the negativity that you have. This is very natural human reactions, but you have to push past them. You have to realize that now you are closer than ever before. But at the same time, there are two things I think that will accelerate this, and there are two things which are the key to succeeding in this. But the question is that, are you willing to do these two things? Like if I said to you, there are these two things that you need to do, and they will get you to success. Guaranteed 100%. Would you do it? The two things I think which will change this situation completely now and transform it is actually conversation and action. Conversation and action. Doing these two things, I think, would transform everything. So, for example, you can have a conversation. You can have one conversation with someone, and that can change their whole life. Okay? They can change their whole life just from one conversation. Okay? Sometimes it requires 100 conversations, and then they change their life, right? But you have to keep having those conversations, because what happens with conversations is that they basically build a different world. They build a different world, right? So for you need to have lots of conversations, and you need to build new worlds with these people, okay? You need to find a way to communicate and converse with them to build a new future. Because think about it. If you are the one that is closest to Allah, you are the one that talks to Allah, makes dua to Allah, prays to Allah, do all these things, and you feel so hopeless, what levels do you think they are at? You're the one praying, you're the one doing all these things, and you are so low in terms of your hope and your kind of thing for the future. So what about someone who's not got all these good things that Allah has blessed you with? What situation will they be in terms of hopelessness and desperation, all this, right? And so what's going to change that is you. And I know it's hard. Like the hardest thing I found for me was to speak to my family and my parents and all these kind of, this is the hardest thing. For an Asian kid, I think it's probably the hardest in terms of communication. But it needs to be done, especially if you're committed to the outcome. So for me, what I would say is that you've got a good thing there now in terms of plan. You need to define the conversations and the actions that now need to take place for each of these things. And I'm not saying that now that you got 50 actions written down and 50 conversations, you go and have those 50 conversations this week, or you go and do those 50 actions. But you know what's making you feel worst of all? It's the desperation, it's the hopelessness, it's the depressive thinking that nothing's going to change. Let's say that, my health is really bad, and it's been terrible and it's been declining. If I go to the gym and I start to make progress, even though my health is still terrible, I will feel much better. Why? Because it's like the direction I'm going in, my trajectory, my little bit of progress, it makes a massive difference. So this is not about life-changing transformation overnight. Everyone's different. No. Just little steps, taking action, and seeing a difference happen in that. So this is what I'm saying for you. I think it's about defining now the conversations, the actions, and also you focusing on your mindset and realizing that this is not on you. You do not need to do this. You do not need to make this happen. This is on Allah to make happen. This is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to communicate, is to speak, is to take action, is to help. To get the results, to change their hearts, this is not something you can do. This is something only Allah's going to do.